Greetings and happy July to everybody. I'm re-recording this video because it didn't work the first time I wanted to put it up. So I'm going to add a few things and talk about what I wanted to talk about last week when I was supposed to have a recording up for you, and what's going on for the next essentially week of this course. First, I want to apologize for Blackboard not doing what I wanted it to do, which ultimately falls on me, with making the student growth tracking information available last Wednesday, which was my goal and my plan. But just like the week before, this time a tornado didn't get in the way of it. But I wasn't able to, I had trouble with Blackboard overseas, and I wasn't able to address that, to make sure that that was up, and I apologize. I was able to check email, but uploading any content, which is why the video didn't go up, was impossible where I was. But I had all kinds of issues logging into Blackboard and doing things in it where I was. Not quite sure what the issue is, but I'm not going to try to do that overseas again. But again, that's on me. So to kind of make up for that as my apology, I did cut the reflection paper out of the student growth tracking assignment, as well as reduce that to one. Feel free to upload two. I will give you feedback on both, but you are not required to. And you'll get full points. It's just there's one this time instead of two. And that's just because that's on me, and there's a very short amount of time. I can't really extend anything past the 7th of July. So that's just a hard date that I'm dealing with. As far as the video, again, I apologize not having it up to talk about growth tracking and what growth looks like, because, again, I had the upload problems while in Amsterdam. I had a few people ask, and Amsterdam was great. Little personal information. I was able to take a trip to Paris by train, and I actually proposed to my now fiance on the Eiffel Tower, which was exciting and romantic, and it was just a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to get to do that. So I took advantage of it. Everybody keeps asking me, well, did she say yes? And I'm like, well, why would I tell you that I proposed if she said no? That would make me look really bad. But it was a great trip, good conference, but it created issues being where it was with where this class fell. So I apologize to all of my other work things that have gotten in the way over the last couple weeks, the tornado and all. But I want to talk about growth tracking just a little bit, and then I want to get into a couple of the just things coming up and kind of where things are going. I'm going to talk about a lot of this on Wednesday as well, but I wanted everybody to have a heads up on, especially because the original due date was Tuesday, tomorrow, for the growth tracker. I wanted to get this video up and give everybody ample time. So, we've done learning habits tracking, which is personalized to that particular student, where their what their goals are and what their needs are. We've talked about standards mastery, which is pretty much the easiest one to kind of put together because most of your curricula is laid out for you. Most of those standards are said, okay, here you have to do X, Y, and Z. You have to teach X, Y, and Z by the end of the year, if not at certain times, depending on your pacing guides or whatever other protocol you have in your district or your school. With the growth, it really is a personal thing between you and the student, and it's almost an agreement between you and the student in a discussion about what you expect from them, or where they should be able to get, and what they're able to do, and what they think is important. This is an area where student agency is supremely important, and viewing the capacity of a student is extremely important. And this growth can be in standards. It can be in information they didn't have coming in. It could be in behavior. It could be in any number of non-cognitive factors that you feel comfortable measuring with that student. But it's really about setting attainable goals. If you set goals that are unattainable or that are very difficult, these students that really need this are going to struggle because they're not being successful. This has to happen in stages. And the way that I look at growth in students is the same way I look at a video game. If you go into any video game, and I don't care, pick one from any generation, it doesn't generally, and there's a few games that do, but it doesn't start off as this. It's not at the same difficulty level as the end of the video game. That end zone or that end part of the game, there's a progression of difficulty. For instance, if we take it back to old school, Frogger. The first couple levels of Frogger were quite easy. Hopefully. You jumped onto some lily pads, and there was a lot of things to jump on. The cars were few, and they were moving slowly across the screen. And then I think you clicked on logs, if I remember, and then into the little bins that you jumped your frog into. That then started to change as you progressed through the game. As you mastered each of those levels, your growth, the skill required to advance grew with the level difficulty. So you had this progression. And then towards, not the end of the game, because there wasn't really an end, I don't think, there were fewer things to jump on. There were alligators you had to avoid, or jump on their back or not in their mouth. The cars were a lot of them, and they were flying across the road. So we had all of this progression of difficulty. This is the reason for that. Is if it was as hard at the beginning as it was at that level you just couldn't get past anymore, you wouldn't do it. You wouldn't do it for very long. If we put it in more modern Candy Crush, we don't go into, I don't play Candy Crush, but I understand the mechanics of the game. It gets progressively harder as you go. If you started with, what those higher levels are, you would stop playing the game and it wouldn't be profitable for the company. And that's kind of how to view this. You want those baby steps. What are those small ones? And then as the year, or the semester, or the quarter, however you're measuring, increases, you make the difficulty a little bit more and you push a little bit harder because they can handle it and they built those skills up. That's the key for this. It's not a series of checkpoints. Standards mastery is a series of checkpoints. This is a series of increasingly more difficult as their skills increase. What's the next benchmark? What's the one after that? And how are we growing them, not just keeping them on a set pace? That's what's important here. And having that conversation with the student and knowing your student, knowing what they're capable of and what their capacity is, that's what's most important here. So really focus on what that capacity is going forward in each one. So how are you going to build progression into growth? That's what growth is. It's not just a series of checkpoints. I'll give you an example. If you told me, go out and run a marathon, I would laugh at you. No, I'm not. I can't. I cannot physically go out and run a marathon. And if you told me, well, go train for a marathon by trying to run 26 miles, I would again laugh at you because it's not going to happen. And you don't train for something like that in that way. And that's how a lot of the students, and if you guys, for those that, if you run marathons, you can lend a little bit to this conversation on Wednesday. But for the majority of us, I think if somebody said, go out and run a marathon tomorrow, you would know. I can't do that. I can't physically do that. I'm physically capable of doing that. There's no reason I can't go out and train to run a marathon, but I can't run one tomorrow. And if you told me go out and run a mile right now, that would probably be an effort for me. But if you told me to go out and walk a mile, that's an attainable goal. I can do that. Go out and walk 2 miles. I can do that. And I keep achieving those goals. Now go out and I want you to run a half mile and walk the rest of the mile. Might be able to do that. Maybe I can't. Maybe you want me to run for a quarter mile or an eighth of a mile. But I can start building that and seeing those gains. But that's going to depend on me. If I'm used to going out and jogging, or I'm used to walking a mile isn't going to be a big deal. If somebody doesn't do that on a regular basis, walking a mile might be a lot, it might be too much. So that requires a conversation with me to know what I'm capable of. What is my capacity to run a marathon? Or what is my capacity to walk a mile or run a mile? And then you understanding, looking at me, what is my capacity to run a mile? What do you think my capacity is? Judging off me and everybody else you've seen run marathons. Do you think I can do it? Do you think that makes sense as a goal? And then when I'm telling you, no, I can't walk a mile. Why not? And having that conversation. And maybe I can. What can you do? And then just push that a little bit. Just give it a little bit more. I can't walk a mile. Can you walk 3/4 of a mile? I can walk a half a mile. Maybe a little more. And just teasing out that growth. But there has to be a progression. You can't let me just keep walking a mile to train for a marathon. You have to at some point go, Dan, you need to be able to run a mile or you can't run 26. You have to have that progression. You have to push. And that's our job, and we all do that. This is nothing different than you do all the time. It's just putting it on paper and giving the student that agency. So that's what I want you to think about with growth, is how can you do that? And you're free to, I said you don't have to submit a second or write a reflection. You're free to do that. And I'm happy to evaluate it, because in case you haven't noticed, for those of you that can get to the grades, that isn't all messed up, my grading's pretty binary, especially for a class like this, because it's not about having that, what percentage of the content did you master? It's not how this is set up. This class is a precursor for the next one. This is so that we can hit the ground running come August, September, and get these in the classroom and start really talking about what's that data do? What can we now do with that data? How can we process it? And having those conversations. To that end, one of the things that I generally pride myself on as a teacher is the ability to give feedback. And it's part of the reason I don't like the online format, is because we could have these conversations in person, and online takes, frankly, a lot more time and energy. Trying to condense the amount of feedback necessary for this course into 4.5 weeks, or by the time I started getting them 3 weeks, it's impossible to give the level of feedback that you deserve and that you need. And as I've said, your students, their being successful is my priority. That's why I do this. So the feedback is going to come, but it's going to come a little bit differently than it would if this was a semester-long class where I had that time to give that feedback and really read through all of these, because I can't just sit there for 20 hours a day and read through these and give feedback. It gets repetitive. And what I find, and this is just me knowing myself, gets really bullet pointy and just, yeah, this is good. Try this, asking questions rather than giving suggestions. Well, how are you going to implement this? Rather than, I'm not quite sure how this is going to get implemented. Have you thought about this? And giving a little bit more, maybe a kind of description of what I think would look good. I can't do that in their current form, or in the time frame I have. I can do it in their current form, but I can't do it in the time frame. So what I'm going to do is, like I said, the grading's pretty binary. You're all doing this for a reason. You're not doing it for a grade. You're doing it to improve your instruction or your coaching. You're doing it for these students. And what I'm going to do is spend the time between now and the start of the next semester is getting you that feedback for each of them. So I've downloaded them, and I work on paper a lot better. So then I have to then translate that back online. Is give you the feedback on these in a succinct format, in a succinct document. So everybody has their all that information in one place. So when we start the semester, we can start it off. You have that feedback, and we can address that feedback in your, if there's anything that needs to be changed in your implementation, and go. So we can start that. We can start collecting this data and start these processes immediately once the semester starts. And I'm going to talk a lot about this Wednesday in class, but I wanted to cover a little bit of it now. So we're going to, I'm going to give you that feedback after. So for now, get the assignments in, and then I'm going to get you all that feedback. And that's the advantage of a cohort-based program, is I know where you guys are going to be, and I know who you're with, me, come August. So we can have really robust feedback that you can use. So that's my goal. And we said we're going to talk about it a lot on Wednesday, and also on Wednesday kind of talk about what next semester is going to look like. How are we going to do that? And I want to kind of negotiate that a little bit with you, because I want to incorporate what your needs are and what works best for you in that setting. So I definitely want to have that conversation with you on Wednesday, and spend some time doing that and preparing, as this course really is, preparing for the fall, which is the meat and potatoes of these two classes. So please, like I said, if you haven't gotten with your partner, get with them and get all this stuff up, because we're really kind of up against the wall time-wise. I can't do anything if I don't have it by the 7th. That's a hard line that I get from everybody. I can't do much past that. There's a couple people that I've talked to that have run into significant personal issues. You guys are not who I'm talking to. But everybody else, please make sure that everything is in by the 7th. And that's the other reason some of you, I don't have all of the grades. Sorry, I got distracted by looking at there's something that went haywire in Blackboard, but I'll figure it out later. I want to give all the feedback I can, so please get me everything I can by the 7th. That's where I'm going to leave this video. And I look forward to Wednesday. Really missed the one when I was stuck in Florida with the tornadoes. Really was, I had such a good time on that first synchronous session that I wanted that to continue. But unfortunately, there's nothing you can do about weather or technology for the most part. So I will see you guys on Wednesday. Thanks for sitting through this video, and let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.